Hey there. When you think of horror actors that have pretty much run the gamut of any role, from the Wolfman to Frankenstein to the Hunchback to Dr. Jekyll, the Mummy, Zombie, or even Satan himself, there's a very few names that pretty much have done it all. A lot of people think of Chaney or actors of his ilk, maybe Boris Karloff for some of the stuff that he's done. But one of the greats was born in 1934 in Spain, and he passed away in 2009. And that would be the great Paul Naschy. Paul Naschy was probably the most prolific Spanish filmmaker of all time. He did 12 films with a werewolf character that was under the name of Waldemar Daninsky. And my first experience with Paul Naschy was back when my son was young. They just opened up a CD Plus here in Corner Brook where I used to live at the time, and I'd walked down there to find this bin of like fairly inexpensive DVDs, and they were all like kind of different titles, stuff that I probably hadn't seen before. And one of the ones that kind of caught my attention was a very lavishly drawn cover of a werewolf film called, I think, Curse of the Devil. And in it was this big, stocky guy who, and it was a very different werewolf film. It was different than I'd seen. The werewolf character, like many werewolf characters, was kind of a sympathetic character, but he was vicious. The film was bloody. There was definitely ample amounts of nudity. Nothing seemed that exploitive. Everything seemed to be in place, and it caught my imagination right away. I remember my father talking about Paul Naschy before, but this was my first experience seeing him. It would be later on some of those cheaper box sets. I would see cut versions of movies like the Wolfman versus the, oh God, what is that again? Wolfman versus the Vampire Woman. There were so many like around that type, but you'd only get the cut ones around then. Now my dad over the years has managed to collect almost all or most of the Naschy films that have come out, and got to like read the biography. And tonight we got to watch something together that was pretty amazing. It was a movie based on Naschy. It was a biography, a documentary, and it was fantastic. And it was called "The Man Who Saw Frankenstein Cry." Now I could tell you why it's called that, but I'd really like you to discover for yourself and watch right to the end, and you will not find out till the very end of the film what the actual meaning behind it is. I prefer if you didn't Google it, if you actually look for this movie and watch it and find out exactly what the meaning behind it is. Paul Naschy was a interesting character. For instance, his real name was Jacinto, and I have to look because I'm not foreign, and I'm not good with the names. Yeah, Jacinto Alvarez, and he had a very prolific career even before we started acting. This guy was he did the covers for Elvis's albums in Spain. He was an artist. He was an athlete. He was great in many sports. He started with soccer. He went on to do weightlifting. He did some wrestling. He had encounters with very colorful characters. He actually had encounters with the legendary Yakuza, and he made films not just in Spain but in Japan and other parts of the world as well. His career ran about 100 or more films. If you've seen the movie The Howling, then the character Paul Molina is named after Paul Naschy, because his name is Jacinto Molina Alvarez, and Paul. So it's probably one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long, long time. I really love documentaries, and I can't give this one a strong enough recommendation. It does a fantastic job of seeing a man go from some amazing go to some amazing places. You'll hear stories of his childhood in the Spanish Civil War, uh, things that you would think could only happen in a film. Amazing stories. The story of his father is incredible. Uh, Paul Nash did so much over the years for horror, not just horror, but for genre making, for films. He actually got to do a Fantastic Factory film, and not one that I've seen. Yes, actually, I have seen it, called Rottweiler. Very different film for Paul Nash. But the Fantastic Factory thing was unfortunately not one of the ones that I would remember Paul Nash for. I remember Paul Nash as Daninsky. I remember the werewolf, and was a character that meant a lot to me, and I still remember to this very day, rummaging through a bin and finding "Curse the Devil," my very first Paul Nash, and hopefully not my last. I hope that over the years I will still find those little Paul Nash films that I never saw before, things that I can discover and rediscover and watch and see with my son, and see as my son grows, and eventually, hopefully, has his kids, and he can discover movies like this with them, things that are timeless. Yeah, Paul Nash started making his films. His first movie was a tiny role in the King of Kings, and his famous character Daninsky was a character that he'd written the movie for, but he wasn't actually even supposed to play. But the other actor couldn't do it, and they were looking for an actor, and he just seemed to fit the part, and fit the part he did, because it became not just his career, but it became his life and his legacy. And he did this up until the day that Paul Nash passed away. The documentary is The Man Who Saw Frankenstein Cry, and that in itself is a great little story that's told at the end of the film. Worth checking out. Definitely worth owning. Check out Paul Nash. If you don't know who Paul Nash is, find out. But find out not by looking up online. Don't find out by reading a couple things. His story is fantastic. Read his biography. Watch his movies. And experience and find out about Paul Nash the way that you should find out about Paul Nash. But for me right now, it's getting late. I have a big journey tomorrow, so I'm probably going to have a drink before I go to bed. And go find out why Frankenstein cried. For me, it's time for tea.